It is Monday, February the 28th. That is right. March is tomorrow. OneSoccer today is back for one final go-around in February. Adam Jenkins, Alexander Gange-Ruzik, Oliver Platt, and Gareth Wheeler. Jordan Wilson, our typical Monday guest, is unavailable due to training commitments. Something about being a professional footballer, not being able to squeeze this fantastic show. And so we appreciate Alex's flexibility. That's why he is one of a kind, a true professional, a fantastic show, because Major League Soccer is not just back. It has been back. It has returned. Lots to get through. The full-time scores: Columbus 4, Vancouver 0, Dallas 1, Toronto 1, and Orlando 2, Montreal 0. We are going to begin with the game inspired, which is a really kind way of saying we liked it so much we just took it for ourselves, called That's True, That Might Be True, or That Is Ridiculous. If you are unfamiliar or uninitiated, that is from our friends. I guess I can't even say our friends. Never talked to them in my life. But the great people at The Ringer.
No idea who we are.
That would be Chris Vernon and Kevin O'Connor. They're going to get a weird Twitter tag and be like, who the hell are these four gentlemen? But that's how the game works. I'm going to give you a statement. You say, that's true, that might be true, or that is ridiculous. We will begin with CF Montreal. Of course, I mentioned the 2-0 loss to start the season, but despite the result, CF Montreal fans should feel extremely optimistic about their season ahead. That's true, that might be true, or that's ridiculous, Oliver.
That might be true. I thought there was definitely some good signs there. The first half, I thought Montreal played really well. Probably the best half I saw from any of the three Canadian teams this weekend. Played out the back nicely. You know, the structure of the team was really good. I really like what Wilfred Nancy is trying to do with this team. But then I just thought you saw the other side of them, which is, you know, it is a young team and there's some naivety there in the second half, right? You have to expect after you've been the better team in the first half, you have to expect a reaction from Orlando. You have to expect them to make adjustments. They come out and they do that and they get the opening goal, and then you just need to sit on the game for 10 minutes, right? Make sure the game doesn't get away from you at that point. And, you know, that's obviously what happened. They concede again. Kyoto loses his temper, and all of a sudden you're basically out of the game. So I think there's still obviously work to do with this team. And I look at the schedule coming up, much like Vancouver, and it's not going to be easy. But I just think there's good signs there that you can hang on to if you're a Montreal fan, that this is a team that can win games this season and win enough games to get in the playoffs.
Alex, how do you do?
I'd say that's pretty fair. Summation of it. I think Montreal, as we saw kind of in their first game versus Santos Laguna, in this game, they just kind of have to learn how to manage the moments. I think they do a good job of putting together solid patches of the 90, but in soccer, you don't have to be the better team over the 90. Sometimes you just have to be the better team in those big moments. And on Sunday was Orlando. They scored the few goals. They capitalized on some individual mistakes at the back. And I think it's a good lesson for Wilfred Nancy's crew. Like Oliver mentioned, it's very young. Some of them haven't played together, but I think you look on paper, this is definitely going to be an exciting team. They've got depth. We have to remember they're also in the Champions League. And as we know, there's just some sort of Champions League curse on teams at the beginning of the season. It's been statistically proven year after year. So the fact that they start on the road and lost is never a bad thing. And then they just have to keep learning from it and find a way to manage those moments better going forward.
Adam, first off, happy St. David's Day tomorrow, my Welsh brethren. I know we're both going to enjoy a pint tomorrow.
I'm going to start tonight, Gareth.
It's true. It's true. Get excited to see Montreal fans. Look, like Alex mentioned it, the Champions League plays a huge role here. Not one team that's playing in the CONCACAF Champions League right now won this weekend in Major League Soccer. So there's only so much you can gain from this game. They go from playing inside in carpet in Montreal to a difficult spot against a good team in Orlando City. I like what I see. I still think they play to their identity. It might just be that one attacking player short. Kamara makes sense as a number 9, but he's 37 years of age. How much can he contribute? We'll see. But I think that this team has the makings of being, you know, an upper echelon, like a top 3-4 team in the Eastern Conference in Major League Soccer. And that, for me, is something to get excited about.
I want to stay on CF Montreal on the topic of attacking players. There was an altercation with Romel Kyoto yesterday that ended up seeing him see red out of here, missing the next match as well. Look, this is a player that plays with fire for club and for country. Whether it was a shove, whether it was a punch, whether it was embellished, it doesn't matter. He saw red. And it's not just that I want to address in our next That's True, That Might Be True, or That's Ridiculous. Alex, CF Montreal needs to bring in another striker because Kyoto cannot be relied upon to contribute week in and week out. That's true, that might be true, or that's ridiculous.
I think I'll go for that's true, as in I think you just look at the overall Montreal striking depth, the fact that Romel Kyoto and Mason Toy kind of at the top of, Toy's out for a bunch of weeks with an injury. Romel Kyoto, I've said it many times, I think on his day, he's one of the best number 9s in CONCACAF, but I just think with Kyoto, you kind of live by the sword, die by the sword, as they say. Both, he kind of has one gear and it's always 100%. And while that's good when he's in form, sometimes it leads to injuries because he's always pushing himself. Sometimes it leads to that fire like we saw in the Orlando game. So for sure, I think Montreal probably needs some more depth. I think that's why Kai Kamara was brought in. I think that was a very good move in terms of a depth signing. And honestly, I don't know what the striking situation in their academy is like, because based on what we're seeing each week from youngsters there, maybe they just have some 18-year-old gem we're not hearing about that can fill in. But otherwise, I'd say yes, they might want to add just a little more depth, because if they're going to keep playing two strikers, if their top two strikers are always going to be injured, or there's always that risk of suspension for Kyoto, it absolutely would make sense to shore up with some even more depth, especially with the Champions League, MLS, Canadian Championship. That's a lot of buckets they have their hands in, so to speak.
Yeah, with the depth, sure. But the question that, as I'm reading it, is about Kyoto and whether he can be relied upon, which I think the question is absolutely ridiculous, is preposterous, and it's off base, might I add. This is their top striker. This was their leading goal scorer from a season ago. He is not a problem just because he's sent off over something innocuous as a shove, and that's exactly what that was. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't like it wasn't a Street Fighter move.
It was like a cross check.
How do you get, it wasn't one of those. It was a little bit of a push. We see it all the time in the footballing world. Referees completely adjudicate shoves differently. Just ask the referee, watch the game. This changes from time to time. And I think that this is blown, overboard. It's over the top. The player was chirping Kyoto when he's down 2-0 in a difficult game. Of course he's going to be frustrated. Of course he's going to bounce up and hold his ground. So yes, Kyoto can be relied upon each and every week. He's the best that they have, and on his day, one of the better strikers in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I think it's more about Mason Toy, to be honest with you. He missed a large part of last season, and now he's injured again, and there's no sign of him coming back in the next few weeks, right? So that's the guy that I'm worried about. And maybe the reason to go and get a striker. Kyoto, for me, is, like the guy said, he's one of the top strikers in CONCACAF, and he will and should be the guy for Montreal.
That's true. That might be true. That's ridiculous. Wheeler's TV turning off mid-show. Wow. Take your time, pal. Take your time. We'll get Wheels sorted, but in the meantime,
I got my below deck set up for right after the show. So
we almost got taken off the air for streaming something we didn't have the rights to. That's true. That might be true. That's ridiculous. In 3 matches this season, 2 versus Santos Laguna and yesterday versus Orlando, Joel Waterman has not had the best start at times. You could even say he's looked like a fish out of water, and that he should not be in Montreal's best 11 moving forward. Gareth, true, might be true, or ridiculous?
Well, it's true because he isn't in their best 11. Rudy Camacho is a starting player at that position. Alistair Johnston plays to his right, and Kamal Miller plays to his left. But again, Waterman had that one poor pass, poor decision trying to play out of the back, which, again, we've seen that from Montreal at a number of different teams. This isn't anything too over the top. I don't think Waterman's played poorly. I think he's played fine. I'm not going to hold it against him making that one mistake. But when you're asking about him being, a part of the starting 11, I mean, he's not part of the preferred starting 11. Camacho is a baller. He's an excellent player, and he's ahead of him. But if that's the question right there, Joel Waterman has looked like a fish out of the water. Ridiculous.
Get out.
Absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe we're doing this to our boy.
That is true. Some lack of love for the former CPLer who, generally speaking, is still growing as a professional in MLS and has been fine. Since I see a unanimous decision, everyone's waving this question away. I'm going to ask a question that I don't want an answer to because I know the answer, in my opinion, counts only. This is CF Montreal's gray kits with the blue paint splatters are a visual atrocity and should never be worn again. Again, I don't want to hear from you. The only answer is that's true. They are bad.
Ridiculous.
Almost as bad. Well, no, saying that they are an atrocity is true, but ridiculous, good synonym. We're already bending the rules.
I hate grey kits. I don't want to ever see another grey kit again. They look terrible on TV. I don't know what the Canadian team's obsession is with grey kits. Like, I think they have this idea that, like, because they're neutral colors, people are going to, like, wear them out to bars and stuff. It's not going to happen, guys. Like,
I like the blue, though. I like the blue.
I don't mind the actual design. I just hate grey kits.
Thank you.
Honestly, I'll just say it's the shorts for me. I think it's just the whole like gray. It's just too much of like a sweatpant gray sweater at home vibe. I think if they put some blue shorts on there, it would change because it's a phenomenal kit. The blue on the front, it's just the shorts. It's wild how much like a pair of shorts can really make or break a kit sometimes.
Fashionista Alexander Gange-Ruzic on the show today, and I agree. Just stop the gray. You have colors. Use your colors.
Yes.
Moving on to Toronto FC, who are also not culpable in the kit game. Jonathan Osorio scored in the 45th minute to earn Toronto a 1-1 draw in Dallas. This game, though, it could have gone either way. Some big decisions from VAR once again. Welcome back, VAR. It's been a total of 3 games, and we're already talking about you. Gareth, Toronto FC fans and players should feel like they got robbed of an opportunity to take all 3 points in Texas. That's true. That might be true, or that's ridiculous.
That's true. And look, the key word there is opportunity, because the first goal shouldn't have stood. Like, I don't know. I think I made the comment over the weekend. The only thing clear is that clear and obvious is anything but clear and obvious. Like, this is the reason why the assistant referee has been encouraged to keep down their flag if they're not sure if a player's offside or not, because then they can go back and overturn the decision. The fact that he put his flag up on that first FC Dallas goal, and then they checked it, and then somehow the referee believes that that call was clear and obvious in terms of a player being onside. I don't understand that whatsoever. So I have a problem with the application of VAR and not that they used VAR. And on the Pozuelo penalty, again, this was a call that was made on the field. It was a penalty called on the defender. I believe it was Martinez at that time. And there was no evidence that was shown on VAR, which was clear and obvious to overturn it. So again, I just think that the referee and the VAR official on the day just simply got it all wrong. Major League Soccer in recent years have actually been better, ahead of the curve in terms of their use of VAR, but this was just an absolute mess on the weekend. So yeah, two critical moments in the game, both decided by a call being overturned, which was not clear or obvious. That makes zero sense to me.
Alex, I'll come to you next to agree, disagree, or say that's ridiculous, but I want to add 2 wheels. When they go to VAR, they look at it. I think the referee, Jerry Marufo, was at the monitor for like 4 seconds and was like, yeah, I got that wrong. So clearly I had some questions there. Alex, what do you think?
Well, I'll come in hot and say it's not, for me, that's actually ridiculous. I think the first call for me, the offside, I can see just based on what the image we got shared on the broadcast. Yes, he looks a mile offside. But also that image does not do the ref or the AR any service, just because it's not lined up properly. You just looking at the lines on the grass. You look also at there was an image shared. I won't say from who, but there's an image with the lawns drying in where the lines were completely crooked. That does no one any service. You see that, you think it's offside. Your mind kind of is drawn to that. If you look back at it, just look at the top of the box. For me, that curve makes it look a lot less offside than it is. And if the ref's gonna go and see that, yes, I feel like it will feel like a harsh decision. The whole debate of clear and obvious is a tough one. We've seen a lot of it in MLS, what is actually clear and obvious or not. And then you look at the penalty. I think there was some contact on the ball there. The studs weren't showing too much from what I remember. It was going to be a harsh penalty when you saw the replay. Yes, the angle we saw in the broadcast, it looked like a stone cold pen. I thought it was as well, but you look at the replay, you see that ball contact. So I think if you're Toronto, yes, you'll feel a bit hard done by, but also at the other end, Dallas were very poor in the final third, especially in that first half where Toronto is kind of easing into it with their new back four. So if anything, if you're Toronto, I think a 1-1 draw is very fair. And while you might bemoan the VAR for the calls, I thought they were very fair from when I saw them live and just thinking back a few days later too.
Yeah, I'm with Alex on this one. Like, I think the penalty is the one where you might have a bit more reason to be unhappy if you're a TFC fan. The replay and the review did show that he did get some of the ball, but maybe you could argue that he got a lot of man as well, and it wasn't clear and obvious and shouldn't have been overturned, even if you could have, not given it in the initial instance. But the offside, I thought. I don't know if you can really argue about that. Like, firstly, I think the initial review is for the tap-in. That's where the linesman is standing. He's standing next to the corner flag when he gives the decision. That clearly wasn't offside, so that's why you get the review. But then if you're also taking a look at Areola while you're doing that review, like Alex said, that graphic that was going around with that line drawn on the screen, firstly, that's not an official graphic because MLS doesn't use lines. And secondly, it wasn't straight. It was misleading. So for me, that one, again, does it fall under the clear and obvious of an offside? I don't think so.
Referee, then the application is all wrong. We saw Ralph Prizo injured last season, retreating back on a 60-yard run because a referee decided to keep his flag down when a player was like 5 yards offside. The assistant referee cannot put up that flag if he's not sure. The application of the rule is the problem here. And you're talking about the official graphic, the official look. Why wouldn't a broadcast? This is a broadcast problem then. Show people what the referee is actually seeing. We've seen transparency in rugby in terms of the way that calls are reviewed on the field, clear communication between the referee and the VAR, the officials that are watching the video. Take away this gray area, take away this debate. The application on both sides of things were absolutely poor, not good enough, not up to standard, and that's why TFC were absolutely robbed here.
I think it was very confusing. And you guys know me. I don't like VAR. I'd rather not have it at all. But I don't think that was necessarily wrong.
I'm only jumping in because Wheels
Not
said the word rugby,
wrong.
and I could feel Ollie's eyes rolling back into his brain, and I didn't want any off-kilter Wales, England, Six Nations chat coming up. Staying with Toronto FC, and a lot of the talk after the match was the application of Bob Bradley, thought that would be easier to say, Bob Bradley, and his system, and that it seemed to work pretty well. It's a very big overhaul of the side, and to come away with a point for a lot of people could be seen as a very good thing. So the next question, and I'll begin with Alex. Alex Bono is getting overlooked. When the starting 11 graphic came up, they saw he was going to be in goal. Some people were like, Alex Bono.
People.
Without his heroics, this is a TFC loss and might be a totally different narrative. That's true, that might be true, and that's plain ridiculous.
I'll probably say go for that. That might be true. I mean, other than that big save that, to be fair, is a game-saving, moment in a 1-1 draw, that the deflected header it was. I mean, Bono didn't have much to do in terms of actually making the stops. I think he only finished with 2 saves. And, I think overall Bono's proven to be a very solid MLS goalkeeper on his day. He has his moments where he's on the way up on the positive side of that ledger. Sometimes he has moments where he's on the negative side of that ledger. So in this game, I'd say it's hard to say that Bono was the game, changer. I think just, Toronto did get very lucky in transition in the sense that they made some great recovery tackles, and also Dallas snuffed away some great chances. So I'm not looking at that game and said that was saved by Alex Bono, but I think Toronto are forgetting that he is, a solid keeper on his day. He might not go out there and win Golden Glove, so to speak, but he does the job. And sometimes that's all you need in MLS, especially in a league where teams can tend to overpay for goalkeepers and waste an international spot. He's domestic. He does the job. He's been in the league. I see everything from him I like in terms of what he brings and what his price point and all that.
Gareth Wheeler.
Yeah.
He's an MLS Cup champion, and it might be true. Like, I thought he was solid in the game against FC Dallas. He got the angle right on that chance that came late in the game for FC Dallas. TFC have 2 really good goalkeepers. I don't foresee this being sustainable. If there's a market for one of them, like Westberg and Bono or Westberg, I have no problem with either of them starting for Toronto FC. I think that both of them got a raw deal based upon some porous defensive and team play in front of them a season ago. It wasn't on the goalkeepers. Did they make a few mistakes at times? Yes. But I'd love to see what that situation actually looks like. TFC needs some cap space in order to add. Kamar Lawrence is still there in the team, but I just think that it would be best for either Bono or Westberg to be playing right now. And now we only get to see one, and that's a little bit problematic for me.
Yeah, if I'm CFC, I want to give Alex Bono the chance to run with a number one job. Nothing against Quentin Westberg, who I think has also been a really good goalkeeper. But like Bono, for me, he's at his best. He's clearly a very good MLS goalkeeper. He's won a championship, as you said, Wheels. But he also wants to be in Toronto, and he's a great teammate, I think, as well.
Great guy. And great guy.
That for me was the biggest positive out of the game at the weekend. Was this team's attitude stunk last season against Dallas? That this was a team that fought, that looked together. And that really showed that, you know, I think maybe some of the bad apples are out of the group and they can turn the page under Bob Bradley in that regard.
I don't want to point all of the fingers, but it's funny that Ollie says bad apples, and I'm going to start the question the way I'm about to start the question. And Ollie, I'm sorry for cutting you off, so to make it up for you, I'm going to give you the first word on this because this, I think, is a present for you. Given how bad Jefferson Soteldo was and how good Carlos Salcedo looked in Dallas, the Soteldo for Salcedo swap will turn out to be more of an important off-season move than signing Lorenzo Insigne, Ollie. That's true, that might be true, or that's ridiculous.
I mean, the question itself is ridiculous. It's, you know, Insigne is going to be perhaps the biggest MLS signing ever. He could have the potential to be. So I'm going to have to say ridiculous to the question, but I love the trade from CFC's point of view, right? I don't think Soteldo was terrible. I don't think he's an awful player. He's doing quite well already at Tigres. But it's clear he wasn't a great fit at CFC for multiple reasons. And I think in Salcedo, they found a way to get out of that deal, which could have been problematic when you have a DP that you don't want. And they've got out of it in a way that's delivered them a centre-back that to me looks absolute class. And he's going to need to be good because you could, as Alex mentioned, some of the moments in transition where he's having to defend on the move, he's got a lot of space outside of him. Like he's going to have to deal with some difficult situations, I think, while the structure of this team comes together. And he did that really, really well on Saturday. So I was super impressed by him.
Wheels.
To Ollie's point, the question is ridiculous. But I think there might be some truth in that. Now, the importance of Insigne, big picture, rebuilding a team, bringing over new players, the profile of Toronto FC, like Salcedo won't come anywhere close. But this guy's absolutely class. And it kind of reminds me when TFC initially brought over Altidore and Javinko and had all this incredible attacking talent. And they simply didn't have in 2015 anyone to defend. And it ended in a 3-0 Montreal Impact thrashing in the playoffs at that time. We're like, wow, is this going to work for TFC? You need proper defenders for any team to go on and succeed. Salcedo is that. This guy is absolute quality. It kind of reminds me, because TFC at that time then brought in Drew Moore, Stephen Beitashour, and Nick Hagland, Eric Zavaleta, and shored up that back four, back five, and just became a completely different team. Salcedo is going to be the key ingredient here, especially playing with young fullbacks. I think that a real message was delivered by Bob Bradley to Chris Mavinga, taking him off at half, not because Mavinga isn't a good player. He just needs to be coachable. Like, he just needs to stay in his position, right? That's why O'Neal came in and provided stability, but it's all built around Salcedo. And he's going to be able to make up for a lot of the deficiencies in that back four. And that's how TFC inevitably will remain competitive in this league. Need to keep the ball out of the back of the net, and Salcedo is going to play a big role in that.
Alex?
Yeah, I'll say for me, I honestly, I'll take a bit of a different take, and I'll approach this question from purely a footballing standpoint. I'll remove, the whole Soteldo off the field, etc.
Do it, Alex. Say it.
Insigne off the field, etc. His marketing. I'd say it's true. I think I looked at TFC's team last year. I'd watched their games. I wasn't sitting there thinking they need a Lorenzo Insigne type player on the pitch to win them games. I'd look at this team is borderline a tire fire a lot of the times at the back. So when I see someone like Carlos Salcedo brought in, and then I see what I saw from him in the first game, it kind of indicates, okay, they needed to shore up at the back. Honestly, they still might need to add a little more there. And it makes a big difference to have a guy like Salcedo back there. So while Insigne, he'll come in and he'll score goals. But I'm looking at what Soteldo did in his short time. He proved to be capable of having flashes in games offensively. And I think that the problem was always going to be defensively. So for me, I think it's true that the Salcedo signing in terms of pure footballing impact, and we have to remember Insigne, for all the talent he'll bring, it's also as much as, marketing, selling jerseys, bringing a star of his caliber to MLS. So I'd say that, yes, the Salcedo swap is infinitely more important to how Toronto FC wants to play and for their drive to success, because you need a solid backline, especially after what we saw last year.
Not just more important, but infinitely more important. He says, doubling down, Alex. I love it. I tried to hold off on the Whitecaps as long as I possibly could, just for the sake of it's not going to be a very pleasant conversation, at least on the match in particular. 4-0 to Columbus. It wasn't pretty, but it didn't necessarily need to be in the opening match of the season. There was the inspirational and lovable, as we saw, Vanni Sartini post-match team huddle, getting everyone together. He said, andiamo, let's move on, and everyone's going to move on, except for us on this show. We're going to pick it apart a little bit. So, scoreline wasn't great. Performance wasn't much better. Alex, unlike Montreal fans who can feel optimistic after their loss to Orlando City, Vancouver fans should be concerned already. Very concerned already. That's true. That might be true, or that's ridiculous.
I'd say that's ridiculous. I think, as bad as that one game was, I think it's hard to sit there and, the only positive I could think was, man, that hoop kit looks phenomenal. And they're at least the best looking team in MLS, in Canada in terms of kits. But yes, it was awful. I'm not going to sit there and pretend like it wasn't. Most of Vanni Sartini's tactical gambles didn't pay off. Columbus just looked like much of the better team over the 90 minutes. The defending was shocking at times, and it was just not the team we saw last year. But it is game one. That's the thing in MLS. As unfortunate as it is to lose 4-0, I think the red card to Jake Nerwinski kind of opened the door for those late goals. I think if you remove those late goals, it was a 2-0 game in a tough environment. So I'm not worried yet. Obviously, you don't want to fall in a hole in MLS, in this MLS season, because you're not going to go on a run like they did at the end of last season every year. And you don't want to rely on that. You want to get some points on the board early if you want to be a playoff team. So I'm just looking at a lot of the errors that went on the game. For me, it was a lot of individual mistakes. It was obviously the tactical mistakes. I think those are, they can be addressed. I think, for example, starting Michael Baldissimo as a lone number 6, based on his physical profile and what we know about him, probably not the right decision against one of the best midfields in MLS. You look at the back three of Tristan Blackman, Jake Nerwinski, and Ranko Veselinovic, all very solid center backs. They were missing a leader out there like a Florian Ljungberth and Eric Godoy to kind of keep it together and avoid some of the mistakes we saw in the first few goals. So I'm looking at those two things. I think if they address that tactically, obviously there's a lot to worry about in the offense too. That's a whole other story. But for the Whitecaps to have success, I've said a lot of times heading in this year, it's going to be all about the defense. The goals will come, especially Brian White wasn't in the lineup. If you get Reingold the ball, the goals will come, but they need to be solid defensively. They weren't on Saturday, and it showed in the result.
Ollie?
Alex is right. It is early, and you've got to give it a few weeks before you can really make a judgment. But that was a tough watch. Like, they just did not look ready to play. And, it's one thing to lose a road game in Columbus, which isn't, too much of a cause for concern on opening weekend, I don't think. But to lose it in that manner and with that kind of performance and with just almost nothing working on the day, that's a little worrying to me, especially, again, I've mentioned this before, when you look at the schedule that they've got coming up. So I didn't think that the switch to a 3-5-2 system really worked. Alex is right about the midfield just getting completely overrun. The wing backs, I thought, really struggled to get the balance of how to be aggressive at the right times, but then also to be in position defensively. Cavallini, I thought, struggled. He was dealt a tough hand, to be fair, but I didn't think it was a particularly encouraging performance from him. Just that first half was brutal. It was just a team that really looked like it was struggling to piece together any kind of coherent idea of how to approach that game.
Gareth, I want to modify this question for you. Somebody in the Vancouver Whitecaps front office is already regretting the contract they gave to Vanni Sartini. That's true. That might be true, or that's ridiculous.
That might be true. I hope that thought process is taking place. I've said it after he was given the full-time job. If there were actually like a list of like 90 candidates, including, managers that had won in prominent European leagues, as we were told at that time, I wonder how they landed on Sartini as the best man available for this job. I still question that. And I think the comments from Max Crepeau that were made last week kind of, dig a little bit deeper into that. I said it on this show. The Dos Santos brothers and Mark specifically did a ton of work, did all the grunt work, the heavy lifting, going through the difficult process of turning this squad over into one that can actually compete. Sartini is really very much just a product of that group. Like, they didn't go in a different direction whatsoever. They just decided that the assistant was kind of better than the guy that was coaching in the first place. And I just think that it was very easy for Vancouver, despite, with all considering everything that club's been through both on and off the field, to roll with a good guy. Like, he's a great personality. I think he's a good coach. I do. I love the persona, but you can only ride that wave of momentum for so long, right? Like, there's plenty of people I like in the game. That doesn't mean that they're going to be the best manager or the best manager for the job. And I think that the assessment that the other two provided about the performance on the weekend kind of enlightens that. Like, look, I think that where you fall on the level of concern for this team depends on what you thought the ceiling was in the first place. Like, what's the expectation for this team? Make the playoffs? Yeah, they should be in the playoff mix. Are they an elite side in MLS? No. And that's why the hire of Sartini kind of highlights that for me. Is just kind of, middle of the road, setting the standard here where the bar should be raised, in my opinion. So, look, yes, it's one game. It's one game, but the comments that are made, and if you could have added another more prominent manager, maybe someone better for the job, then maybe we would see this team kind of roll over and look a little bit different entering this season, rather than one where I believe there's rightfully a lot of questions being asked about this group.
We have one final question we got to get to. We're tight for time, but I do want to give Alex some love, because just before we went to air discussing the show, he said the biggest thing with Sartini for him is if he does not make the adjustments he identified as problems, through which he admitted there were plenty, that's where there is serious reason for concern, something that Dos Santos didn't get to. So Alex, just wanted to get that in because I thought that was a great point. Final question for the day. Dealing Max Crepeau to LAFC and making Thomas Hasal the starting goalkeeper already looks incredibly stupid. That's true, that might be true, or that's ridiculous, Alex.
I mean, from a footballing standpoint, yeah, I mean, it's obviously you're going to regret that move as soon as it happened in terms of what you lost in Max Crepeau. Obviously, you go from a sure thing to a long-term bet. Thomas Hasal, again, once he gets the reps under him, he has a very high ceiling for a reason. Until I know, any of us know what these personal reasons that caused this trade to happen, it'll be hard to judge. But I mean, yeah, it's true. It's true in terms of you see what Max Crepeau did in that opening game for LAFC. He didn't have much to do, but he kept a clean sheet. He just kind of brought his voice, some passion to the back line, whereas Thomas Hasal, as you can see, while I don't think he was at fault for any of the goals, he's going to have to grow into being a leader at the back, organizing his back line, being that guy sometimes where, I think he was too nice to someone like Javane Brown on that second goal. Tear his head off. Let him know that that was some absurd backtracking from the Whitecaps wing back. So I think there's going to be growing pains with Thomas Hasal, and I'm excited for what he can do when he gets those reps and gets comfortable. But of course, it's going to hurt, especially based on what we're going to see from Crepeau with LAFC. That was a match made in heaven in terms of the trade, the fit, and everything. And it's going to suck if you're the Whitecaps and Crepeau keeps winning. But hopefully Hasal can start to figure that out soon, because again, he has a high ceiling. He has the tools to be a good goalkeeper. He just needs those extras, those intangibles.
Gareth,
I'm going to go with it. It might be true. To Alex's point, like, Alex, don't you feel like you lose something off the field as well? Just in terms of a leader, or just a well-liked guy within that squad, like for club and country. I mean, he's an exceptionally popular guy. You take him away. I agree with Alex's assessment as well. Like Youngworth and Godoy, you have to start some leaders at the back to help protect the goalkeeper. This game's not on Hasal. I think he'll have better days, and so will the entire team. But it's those intangibles. It's not just losing a top goalkeeper in MLS in terms of his play. It's what it means to the group off the field as well.
Final word,
yeah,
Charlie.
I agree with that assessment, and I definitely think that Youngworth and Godoy, or at least one of them, would certainly help the team organizationally. But I'm going to say that's ridiculous, because I think Crepeau wanted to go, right? I don't think they had much choice in the matter, and I have no problem with Vancouver giving Hasal the chance. I didn't think he was at fault for any of the goals at the weekends. Didn't think he really looked out of place. Would I like to see them bring in, a number two, maybe with a bit more experience to support him and compete with him? Sure. But I've got no problem with them making him the number one and giving him that chance. I think he looks like he's ready for it. again, can you kind of mitigate it with some more experienced players in the lineup in defensive areas that can help him from a leadership standpoint? Sure, but I think he's ready to be the guy.
Yeah, just to that point, Ollie, I know there's a lot of hype about Brazier right now. On the first goal, I thought he could have done better. He's 6'4".
Yeah, me too.
Doesn't cut off that cross. You want to talk about communication, leadership at the back. It's just funny how like one young Canadian goalkeeper can have all kinds of hype, and another one that's very promising as well. There's kind of that Monday morning quarterback about him, and for me, without a whole lot of good reason, right? Like he's not Crepeau, but that doesn't mean that he can't develop into being a very good goalkeeper. So I think some perspective is required when we approach, the trajectories of both young Canadian goalkeepers playing for these MLS teams.
Yeah, that's going to be it for the MLS portion of the day. We have to say goodbye. More Major League Soccer talk will be coming. A quick shout out before we go. Look, we're in a difficult time right now. We need as many good stories as we can, and Jean-Jacques and Northern Tribune in general had a great one on Sviatek Artemenko, former CPLer, signing the top flight in Ukraine. Days later, enlisted in the Ukrainian military to defend his country. I think that's pretty incredible. I think credit where credit is due, both to the story and to the incredible bravery. So tip of the cap, and this big stay safe to you, Sviatek. That's it for today. Alex, Gareth, Ollie, thank you everyone for being here. Back tomorrow, OneSoccer today, and MLS talk all season long. Make sure you're subscribed. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all the spots. Bookmark onesoccer.ca. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.